There are moments when the palace doesn't shake from scandal screaming in public. It trembles from a single truth whispered too late to stop it. And this is one of those moments. Because when Sarah Ferguson finally spoke, she didn't shout, she didn't accuse, she didn't rage. She acknowledged. And that quiet acknowledgement detonated a story Meghan Markle believed was buried forever. This wasn't gossip drifting through tabloids. This was history pressing its face against the glass. For years, the palace protected silence like it was sacred. Secrets stayed sealed. Names stayed unspoken. But the streets started buzzing when word leaked that Fergie had finally referenced something she once swore she'd never touch, a past involving Prince Andrew that didn't fit the neat timeline the public had been sold. And if what she hinted at is even partially true, then Meghan's carefully curated rise doesn't just crack, it splinters. Because the story doesn't begin with a duchess. It begins with a yacht. February 2002. Nice France, not London, not Hollywood, not anywhere near a palace gate. Prince Andrew was traveling through Europe on official business. That part is public record. What wasn't public was the private celebration arranged in his honor. No hotel ballroom, no embassy dinner, a Greek millionaire's yacht docked quietly off the coast, no press, no cameras, no accountability. A floating world built for discretion. The guest list wasn't random. Wealthy insiders, connected names, carefully chosen faces. And among them, witnesses say, was a young American woman with no title, no fame, but an unmistakable sense of direction. Meghan Markle. At that time, she wasn't royal, she wasn't famous, she wasn't even close. But according to people who were there, she arrived with confidence that didn't ask permission. She spoke openly about ambition, Hollywood, power. She mentioned her father's industry credentials. She didn't talk like someone hoping to make it. She talked like someone who had already decided she would. And here's the part that never gets said plainly. Witnesses insist she wasn't there by accident. That yacht wasn't about partying. It was about arrival. About who would step on board next. Every expose needs a witness who doesn't belong. In this story, that witness is known only as Bob, a pseudonym used to protect his identity. Bob wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, he was an Australian backpacker, broke, drifting through Europe, unaware that one casual invitation would place him inside a story that would one day chase a duchess into the palace. Bob met the yacht owner's son by chance. Drinks turned into conversation. Conversation turned into an invite, a party you'll never forget. Bob didn't know he was stepping into something sealed with silence. He remembers the shift in the air before Prince Andrew arrived. He remembers Meghan already commanding attention, not because she was famous, but because she moved like someone who believed she would be. Other women on board noticed. Whispers spread, eyes rolled. Some called her a fantasist. Meghan didn't care. She wasn't watching them. She was watching the stairs. When Prince Andrew stepped on board just after 11 p.m., the atmosphere changed instantly. Authority has weight. And Meghan moved with purpose. No waiting for introductions, no hovering on the sidelines. She positioned herself to be seen, to be unavoidable. Less than 30 minutes later, witnesses say she was sitting on his lap, openly, confidently, in full view, leaning in, whispering, touching him like someone who already believed she belonged there. This wasn't subtle. This wasn't accidental. And here's the detail that changes everything. Prince Andrew didn't stop it. He didn't stand. He didn't step away. He stayed. And that's where shared responsibility begins. What happened next unfolded fast. One moment they were on deck. The next, witnesses watched them descend a narrow staircase into the private cabins below. Then nothing. For 3 full days. No deck appearances, no mingling, no sightings. Crew members later recalled food and drinks delivered to a single cabin. One door. Closed. Morning to night. Night to morning. 72 uninterrupted hours, no photos. No recordings, only memory and silence. When they finally emerged, witnesses say Meghan looked calm, satisfied, glowing. And then she said something that froze the air. I've got my prince at last. That wasn't flirtation. That wasn't a joke. That was a declaration. They left the yacht together. No explanation, no awkwardness, as if vanishing for 3 days was perfectly normal. But it wasn't, and the consequences didn't stay on the water. After Nice, Meghan didn't behave like someone who'd had a fling. She behaved like someone who believed she had secured a future. Sources say she stayed in contact with people from the yacht, including Bob. More importantly, she stayed in contact with Prince Andrew, or at least she tried to. At first, messages went through. Then Andrew returned to London and everything stopped. Calls unanswered, messages ignored, silence so complete it felt deliberate. According to sources, Andrew eventually gave a clear instruction to staff: do not put her through. That wasn't confusion, that was a wall. And this is where the story sharpens. Meghan wasn't calling for closure. She wasn't chasing nostalgia. Sources say she believed she had news. News that would force him to respond. News that would change everything. But the phone never rang back. Days became weeks. Hall pardoned into panic. Because when silence meets expectation, it becomes pressure. According to multiple sources connected through the yacht circle, Meghan believed she was pregnant. Not wondering, not speculating, believing. She told people close to her that she had important news for the prince. Inside her circle, everyone understood what that meant. In her mind, this wasn't a crisis. It was leverage, permanence, a future locking into place. But the palace door never opened. And when powerful men go quiet, they leave others to deal with the fallout. This is where the story turns darker, and this is where Fergie's confession starts to matter. Because what she acknowledged wasn't rumor. It was recognition of a past that never fully disappeared, a chapter the palace tried to forget. And just as Meghan believed she had escaped it, that old story began walking toward the present again. What happened next is the part of the story no one wanted spoken out loud, not because it was unbelievable, but because it explained too much. Because once the silence from London stretched long enough, it stopped being accidental and started feeling intentional. And when someone realizes the door they were counting on will never open, survival takes over. According to the same chain of sources tied to the yacht circle, Meghan waited. She watched the calendar. She checked the phone. Days blurred into weeks. The message never came. The call never returned. And in that vacuum, the reality settled in. There would be no prince riding in to solve this. No palace protection. No future guaranteed by proximity to power. This was no longer about romance. It was about consequences. Sources say Meghan ultimately made a decision she never imagined making alone. The pregnancy was terminated, not because ambition vanished, not because the vision changed, but because the palace never responded. Silence in this case wasn't passive, it was decisive. And once that door closed, whatever fairy tale ending she believed she was stepping into on that yacht evaporated. But if this were just an abortion story, it would have ended quietly. It didn't. Because the fallout wasn't only emotional, it was physical, and it would permanently alter her life. After the procedure, Meghan didn't retreat from ambition, she pivoted. Sources say she became involved with a politically connected men tied to powerful circles. Influence changed hands. Access replaced intimacy. The pattern remained the same, only the target shifted. Then came a brief affair with an actor. And according to sources, that single decision triggered a chain reaction no one could undo. The actor allegedly carried an STD. The infection escalated rapidly. What started as discomfort became something far more serious. By April 2002, just months after the yacht in Nice, sources claim Meghan underwent a hysterectomy. Read that again, a hysterectomy. Not cosmetic, not elective, emergency, survival. One moment, she believed she was positioning herself for royalty. The next, she was facing a medical reality that closed the door on having biological children forever. And if you're wondering why this chapter of her life was never discussed publicly, never hinted at, never acknowledged, this is why. Because it ties everything back to those 3 days on the yacht, to the silence that followed, to a prince who never picked up the phone. Ghosts don't disappear just because people stop talking about them. Years passed, the world moved on, new headlines replaced old whispers. Prince Andrew never spoke publicly about the past. But people who knew him, really knew him, remembered fragments. Stories half told, details never printed. And above all, one person remembered everything. Sarah Ferguson. Fergie wasn't just an ex-wife. She was a historian of Andrew's life. She had lived through his brightest moments and his darkest scandals. She understood his patterns. She knew which doors were sealed for a reason. And she carried knowledge she never weaponized. Until now. When Fergie finally spoke, she didn't explode. She didn't accuse. She didn't name names. She acknowledged. And that quiet acknowledgement rippled through the palace like cold air under a locked door. She didn't say Meghan's name. She didn't reveal every detail, but what she confirmed was enough to draw a clear line between past and present. Enough to suggest that Meghan's history with Andrew didn't begin with Harry's proposal. Enough to make people inside palace walls re-examine timelines they thought were settled. Enough to make Meghan, sources say, feel the old story clawing its way back toward daylight. This is the moment panic sets in. Because once the secret starts moving toward the present, it doesn't politely turn around. Imagine Meghan standing in a hallway lined with royal portraits, faces frozen in time, watching. She entered this world believing reinvention erased origins, that a new name, a new marriage, a new title could overwrite chapters she didn't want revisited. But the past doesn't forget the people it touched. Not on yachts off the coast of Nice. Not in palaces built on memory. Not in families where every whisper finds an echo. Sources now say Fergie is preparing a tell-all book, not a scorched earth attack, but a reckoning, a survivor's account. And buried inside those pages may be truths Meghan never imagined seeing daylight. The palace knows it. Meghan knows it. And that's why the atmosphere has shifted. This isn't noise. This isn't tabloid chaos. This is pressure. Because once Fergie cracked that door, it couldn't be resealed. The palace is holding its breath, waiting to see whether more of that hidden chapter surfaces. And Meghan feels it, not as headlines, not as gossip, but as a slow, cold truth pressing its hand against the window of her carefully rebuilt life. Every story has an origin, and some origins refuse to disappear. The storm isn't here yet, but it's close. Close enough to hear the first raindrops tapping at the glass. And when it finally breaks, it won't just reshape how the world sees Meghan's rise. It may force a reckoning with the parts of her past the palace thought were safely buried. Because silence only works until someone remembers.